pregame show ahead of kickoff as we get you set for Texas A&M versus LSU with first place in the SEC up for grabs this evening at Kyle Field. Kickoff is set for 6:44 p.m. on ABC. That's Central Time, of course. But for the next 30 minutes, myself, Richard Zane, as well as David Nuno, Callie Gardner, Ryan Broninger are going to run down each of the top storylines ahead of this mega game between the Ags and the Bayou Bengals. Of course, this is the TexAgs Tailgate, so it would be wrong to not show you the tailgate that's going on outside of our walls here at 308 George Bush Drive. And without further ado, we're going to throw it to Callie Garner, who's checking in on the actual TexAgs Tailgate.
Howdy, Ags. My name is Callie Garner, and I am live at the TexAgs Tailgate, which is located right outside of the TexAgs office at 308 George Bush Drive, right across the street from Kyle Field. Stop by for all things pregame. We've got 1775 pit barbecue, the standard ranch water, yard games, and so much more. There's so many former football players, baseball players, and Texas A&M athletes that are here. We have Derek Frazier, former baseball player J.B. Moss, and all your favorite TexAgs personalities, including Billy Lucci, David Nuno, Ryan Broninger, Richard Zane, Kay Nagley. We've got the whole crew out here. Right now, we've got the Texas-Vanderbilt game on as well as the Alabama-Missouri game on. We've always got the best college football games streaming live from the TexAgs Tailgate. As a reminder, we're out here 3 hours before kickoff, so make sure to stop by before the New Mexico State and the TU game for some pregame fun. Now I'm going to send it back to Richard in the studio for some final football thoughts before the Aggies beat the hell out of LSU. Gig 'em.
Thank you so much to Callie Garner for giving me a shout out on my own show. That was awesome. Thanks so much to Callie Garner. And of course, our thanks as always to Mr. Nick Savage in the back producing this wonderful program. Callie was outside at the actual TexAgs Tailgate. This is called the TexAgs Tailgate Show. A little bit behind the scenes on what we're going to be doing over the next 30 minutes as we get you set for Texas A&M versus LSU, a top 15 showdown in College Station. We'll have David Nuno here momentarily live from inside Kyle Field as warm-ups start getting going, as the Ags and the Tigers start to stretch and get loose. We'll have the SEC student athlete availability report for you. That's always due 90 minutes before kickoff each week. Texas A&M LSU set to kick off officially at 6:44 p.m. Central Time. So we'll see that as it rolls in. Of course, we'll react to some scores from around the country, games that impact the Aggies. We're keeping an eye on Texas and Vanderbilt, of course. Missouri and Alabama are playing right now. We'll see if that can help improve the Aggies' resume. And of course, Notre Dame, a huge win over Navy earlier in the slate. With that, let's go ahead and throw it live to our fearless leader, the TexAgs director of content from inside Kyle Field. Looks like he's on the east side of the stadium, excuse me. Mr. David Nuno, first question, how was the walk over to Kyle Field in this wonderful October heat wave we're having?
Richard, I come from the TV world where sometimes we overrate things. The walk over here was not like what I've had at TexAgs the last 3 years. It feels like a heavyweight matchup, like a huge game. Like we've had some big games here at Kyle Field. But I came to TexAgs offices this morning at 10:30. The traffic was ridiculous.
A little bit of technical difficulties, of course. David, go ahead. I think we got you back. We kind of lost you for the last half of that second segment, or that second sentence, excuse me.
Yeah. Well, it was terrible. The traffic was ridiculous. But I got here, and I'm telling you, the buzz outside the stadium is ridiculous. There's so many people, and there is a lot of purple and yellow, unfortunately, but it is a crazy atmosphere. I will say this, so the players walking on the field, I don't know if you guys have seen Kay Nagley's tweet. I'm sure we'll try to pop it up here in a minute. But there's been some chirping already. Braden Swinson walked right behind us and was kind of chirping at some of the players as he walked on the field. As you know, a couple of days ago, he was going back and forth on social media with Aggies. And so just bottom line is, I think there's a lot of activity going on here. Armaj Reed Adams was the one who was going back and forth with him. And I made a commentary about the Drake lyrics that was on there. So bottom line is, I think it's a crazy atmosphere. I'm trying to give you guys a live look at everything happening right now. A bunch of the starters are starting to come out there. There's Torian York right there to my left. I'm not sure if he's in frame just yet, but he's out here. I saw Demetrius Crownover earlier. So there's a bunch of guys getting ready for this game, Richard. And I'm going to tell you, to me, it's about matchups, right? And when you think about what LSU does well and what A&M does well, who is going to execute at the higher level? The defensive line at A&M has been so fantastic all season long, especially after that Notre Dame game. They found something. They found that next level. Well, from that point on, they played fantastic. But then you look at the LSU side of things. That offensive line has been so dominant, only giving up 2 sacks here on the season. The bottom line is, can you get to Nuss? Can you get to Garrett Nussmeier? Something that has not happened many times this season. The last time he was sacked was in that South Carolina game. So if the defensive line and the offensive line go toe-to-toe, then what becomes the big difference maker in this game? And to me, it's about quarterback play. Nuss has been a very efficient quarterback for LSU this year. We've had some highs and some lows from Connor Wickman. If Connor Wickman gives you the kind of offense that we think he can, then A&M is going to come away with the Kyle Field factors and everything that we've seen from this team this year as the winner of this game and be in pole position to make it to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. But that's still a ways to go. They've got to take care of business here tonight against an LSU team that is getting better as the season goes on. And that's one thing you can say about a lot of Brian Kelly teams. They get better as the season goes on. And we're learning about the Mike Elko era at Texas A&M. I think a program that will continue to get better year 1 versus year 3. You know how good year 1 was for Brian Kelly. They ended up winning the West, losing to A&M in the last game of the season. This year, obviously, meeting against LSU much earlier in the season, it could have huge ramifications.
So, David, you brought up a couple things. First off, the traffic, getting to College Station, getting to 308 George Bush Drive, getting to Kyle Field. You and I are coming from the same part of town. First off, my girlfriend told me traffic was a nightmare. You've told me traffic is a nightmare. First off, I need to teach you guys how to use the side streets. Y'all got to get on Welsh Avenue and go north and not deal with Welborn Road, excuse me. You got to learn.
Thousands of people watching.
You got to learn that. I know I'm throwing you under the bus, but I'm going to go ahead and throw Jenna under the bus and go ahead and say Margot's better than her. That's her sister. I was told to say that. Nuno, a lot has been made the last 48 hours as Brian Kelly walks right by you. There's the head coach of the Bayou Bengals, his 3rd season. I don't know if you guys know this, David. I don't know if you know this, but Brian Kelly's had quite a lot of success in his 3rd year at different stops, whether that be at Notre Dame or at, where was he before that? I believe Bowling Green, perhaps. He went to a national champion. Cincinnati, thank you. He went to a national championship game in his 3rd year at Notre Dame, obviously losing to Alabama. But Nuno, a lot has been made the last 48 hours about the blackout. I've got my black out. You've got your black on. Walking through Aggie Park on your way to Kyle Field, how did it look like the 12th man received the pleading and the messaging from the A&M players and the coaching staff to show up and wear black at Kyle Field tonight?
Oh, a lot of black. There was black everywhere. In fact, I'm looking around the stadium right now as they just opened the doors moments ago. There's a few maroons out there. We're going to accept them. But there's a lot of black from these kids or these families that have walked in. By the way, as Brian Kelly was walking, I don't know if you noticed, number 3 walked right behind him. That's Chris Hilton, one of their top wide receivers. He has not played this season. He did practice on Thursday for LSU. He is their deep threat. He is going to be somebody that looks like he's going to be playing today. He was out here warming up just a few minutes ago. Just to keep an eye on somebody, Chris Hilton is supposed to be their over-the-top threat.
So then the next thing I was going to say to you, because the SEC Student Athlete Availability Report did drop a few moments ago. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. Hilton not listed on LSU's availability report. So I think that means he's going to be in for tonight's game. The question mark for LSU is going to be CJ Daniels, one of their other wide receivers. Have you seen number 4 in white walking around today? That's a big question for you, David Nuno.
No, Richard, we've actually been looking for CJ Daniels, and he's their number 3 wide receiver. Now, obviously, I think you're going to have to reshuffle the deck with Chris Hilton playing tonight. He is probably a 2-3 for them. He is their over-the-top threat, but not necessarily their second go-to guy. But CJ Daniels, no doubt about it, is a guy that they use and they love having him. I have not seen him out here yet. We have been looking for number 4, and at least to our eyes, we have not been able to find him.
So obviously the wide receiver position and the passing game for the Tigers is a big matchup against the Aggie secondary. Nuno, take us through it. What do you think about the LSU passing attack led by Garrett Nussmeier and names like Kyron Lacey, Mason Taylor against this Aggie secondary with Bryce Anderson and Willie the Third and all the cast of characters back there? What do you think about that matchup this evening?
So I thought the best wide receiver crew that A&M would face this year was Missouri, and we know how good of a performance the A&M defense had against them. But the thing is about LSU, it doesn't matter who the guy is, right? They just keep bringing in wide receivers to do big things. Milton Neighbors goes to the NFL, and Kyron Lacy is a nice player last year. Now he steps up into that wide receiver one role. I think it is going to be, it's not really about the secondary versus the wide receivers. In my opinion, it's about what the defensive line does to Garrett Nussmeier to force him to throw maybe a little bit out of schedule, which is where I think Will Lee and the rest of the guys, Marcus Radcliffe and all them, can step up and have some big plays. To me, that is the storyline. If the defensive line can create some havoc to force Nuss to throw some interceptions, which, by the way, this season he has thrown interceptions. Last week, he had a couple of passes into double, triple coverage that could have been picks. Just like we talked about, Connor Wickman had a couple of interceptions that could have happened to make that stat line look even worse. Well, the same thing can be said about Nuss. He threw into double, triple coverage several times last year. I think the A&M defense is a significant upgrade to the Arkansas defense, especially when the Arkansas defense was playing with an offense that was really hamstrung. I think the A&M offense is going to be just fine, putting the defense in a great spot. If they can put pressure on Nuss, I think that secondary lives up and can neutralize, because that wide receiver group is good overall. You just want to neutralize that.
If you see the line there, Texas A&M as of 5:11 Central Time, so about an hour and 33 minutes before kickoff in College Station. Texas A&M still a 1-point favorite. Nuno, a few moments ago, you mentioned the Twitter fingers that were going on earlier this week between the LSU defensive line and Texas A&M offensive linemen, Amaje Reed-Adams and Trey Zune III. What do you make of all of that? And also, that seems to be...
Look at this, guys. There's a little fight or something going on right now. There's a fight going on right there. I see people pushing. I see LSU players running over there. So we'll make sure that we get that on there, our live broadcast.
Yeah, we see that. We see that, David. They've been trying to tell us all week long as there's Nana, the 12th man.
On our side looks to be, and it looks like 50 on the LSU side. If you want to follow him, 50 on the LSU side.
55 would be Amaje Reed-Adams. Correct me if I'm wrong. So he's one of the guys who's doing the Twitter.
Emory Jones. It's probably Emory Jones.
So obviously fireworks flying already, David. This is something we talked about and you guys talked about on TexAgs Live and in all of our pregame coverage leading up to this game this week. This is a rivalry, whether you want to call it one or not. You know, obviously I know this game kind of replaced the TU game on A&M's schedule for the last 12 years before the T-Sips joined the conference this year. This game replaced LSU on LSU's schedule, replaced Arkansas and their rivalry week game for a number of years. It certainly feels like a rivalry, no? Especially with that pregame scuffle that we just saw.
Yeah, it absolutely does. But I'm going to go ahead and remind folks, this is the way it's supposed to be. I'm not saying that they're supposed to be fighting pregame. I don't know what happened right there, but it looks like security or somebody from LSU is talking to some of our players. Now they're giving it a little bit of love. I don't know if you can see that from your perspective. But
currently
got
eyes on Colin Klein.
I'm sorry, what was that, Richard?
I've currently got eyes on Colin Klein chatting it up with an LSU staffer.
Gotcha. There's a lot of love being given right now. But I think back to your commentary earlier about the rivalry. This is two teams who desperately want to be in Atlanta. These are two teams, and this is a team in A&M that has not been able to reach the level that LSU has, right? The LSU has done it on multiple occasions. The last few years for LSU have been pretty good, the last couple of years under Brian Kelly. Well, they've had some thuds too, right? I think Billy had the stats since, other than the Joe Burrow year, they've lost at least 3 games, excuse me. And, obviously A&M would love to get to a level where you're 10-2 every year and better. And that's what they're striving to do. LSU's had some hiccups along the way as well. Even the year that they went and won the SEC West, they lost the last 2 games before their bowl game, right? They lost the A&M game. They lost the game against Georgia. And I believe they played, I might be wrong here, but I believe they played Wisconsin and blew them out in the bowl game. But the bottom line is, these are two teams that are desperate to win the SEC. This game does not ensure anything, but it does put you in the right position. This game, what it can mean is the next week becomes bigger, and the week after that becomes bigger. And both teams know that what's at stake.
Absolutely. The next week for Texas A&M would be a road trip to Columbia, South Carolina, but nobody's looking ahead of what's going to kick off here in about an hour and a half. Reminder, you're listening to the TexAgs or watching the TexAgs Tailgate. Richard Zane, David Nuno from Kyle Field. Nuno, a couple more questions before we let you go, because I know you've got other duties there inside the stadium this evening. The offensive line, excuse me, the offensive line for LSU has not allowed a sack when the starters have been in the game. LSU quarterbacks have only been sacked twice all year long, going up against the vaunted Texas A&M pass rush. Names like Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, Albert Regis, Rodas Johnson. And I know I'm forgetting a name or two, but that's just because there's so many of them. Take us through that matchup tonight, and I want to put you on the spot, Nuno. I want to make you make a prediction. Do the Aggies get to Garrett Nussmeier tonight? Do they drop him for a sack? Go.
Yeah, they're going to drop him a couple of times. That's my opinion of the situation. I understand. Look, that's not a shot at LSU's offensive line. I just think I picked A&M to win by a close score. And for A&M to win, you're going to need a pass rush, right? So yeah, I do think they get to the quarterback a couple of times. That's what A&M does, and I think it can come in different ways. It may not just come. It could be a safety blitz, it could be a linebacker blitz. But yes, I do believe they will be able to get to him. That's what A&M specialty is. You're playing at home. At Kyle Field, 110,000 people are going to be rocking. Yeah, I absolutely expect for A&M's defense to get to Garrett Nussmeier and get through a couple seconds. And I think the LSU offensive line is going to have their moments as well. They are too good. You got two first rounders potentially on that offensive line. So yeah, look, it's going to be a battle, but I think A&M's going to get a couple.
Yeah, you mentioned those two first rounders. It's the bookends. It's Will Campbell and it's Emory Jones Jr. Emory Jones Jr. They've got one guy that's named Emory Jones Jr. and they've got like a running back that's named John Emory Jr. So it's a little confusing for us baseball analysts sitting in here. Nuno, on the way out, I need an X factor from you, a player to watch. So that's your X factor, and then I need a key stat to watch from you. And then you already said Texas A&M is the team you've picked to win. We saw you do that during Pick 6 on TexAgs Live yesterday. Give us a final score prediction. Go for it.
All right, let's take this in part. So the first part is who's going to be the X factor. The X factor needs to be Connor Wigman, right? I don't think Connor has to throw for 350, but Connor needs to be really good, protect the ball. If Connor throws for 190 to 220 with no interceptions, and I say that as an if, that's something that this offense can absolutely do. I think A&M's going to win the game. So yes, and that it's going to mean spreading out the ball. Noah Thomas getting his, Jabree Barber getting his. That's going to be a part of it. The other question was a stat to look out for. Obviously, we're looking out for the sacks in this game, but I'm looking for pass deflection, something that A&M has done a really good job. Batted balls, tip balls, pass deflections. I think that's going to play a part in this game. You do not want Nuss to get into rhythm, and I think A&M has been so good at pass deflections this year. You need to be looking out for that. And a final score, 31-27-ish is what I'm feeling. I feel like it's going to be a 4 to 6 point win for A&M, 31-27. I'm sure we have some LSU fans watching this show like, this guy's a loser. What does he know? Look, I think A&M, I think being at Kyle Field is going to matter. LSU absolutely has had a much better start to their season, more than midway through their season than I think most people expected, especially after the USC game. I think the same thing can be said for Texas A&M. After the Notre Dame game, people got off the train. I think this game can settle it, the direction of the SEC, and I think you have to factor in Kyle Field with a team that is learning how to win late, just like LSU is. But I'm going to make the Kyle Field be the difference maker there, and I'm going to say A&M wins at 31-27.
David, thanks so much for the live hit from Kyle Field. I believe our first ever live hit from Kyle Field. Make sure you keep Kay, Olin, Jamie, and Brian all in check while you're out there this evening, okay? And we'll see you back here for postgame wrap postgame.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate you, sir. Good job today.
Of course. Thanks so much, David. David Nuno out there at Kyle Field ahead of kickoff for
He's out there, huh?
Texas A&M. Yeah, you saw how I dropped that in there, right? It's currently, what is that, 5:19 kickoffs at 6:44 p.m. Central Time. Joining me inside the studio now, the Rollo Insurance is our recruiting analyst and baseball analyst, Ryan Broninger. But we're just going to go ahead and react a little bit.
Hold on. Did you see David got his feathers went up whenever that scuffle, like he was going to run out there and put some jujitsu on somebody?
Man, I saw some of his moves.
Oh, yeah. He threw his shoulders back.
Lobby, so.
Yeah, him and Lucci sparred on Friday.
You got the video, right?
I have great video. It's great video. Great video.
Maybe one lucky subscriber wins that.
That might be, yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to win any of that.
Put the guy in the tank. But I did notice, like, he's, what's going on over there?
So give me your thoughts on this matchup, Texas A&M LSU. I just asked Nuno for his X factor, so a player to watch, his key stat, and then a score prediction. And then the two of us will go through games around the country that we're kind of watching that impact the Aggies.
Yeah, on the LSU side, I think for both sides, everybody's going to look at the quarterback play tonight, right? And for all that everybody's broken down, Garrett Nussmeier and Connor Wigman, they have these similar arcs in their game, right? Where it's like these hot and cold arcs. Which guy can be consistent? But for me, tonight is a typical take your eye off the ball game. Watch what's going on at the line of scrimmage on both sides. If A&M can get going with Le'Veon Moss and get that offensive line lathered up and really get into that LSU front seven, which is a little banged up, Whit Weeks is playing outside of his mind. But I do think that's an interesting matchup, A&M's run game against the LSU front seven. On the flip side, you mentioned LSU's offensive line being so potent in pass protection. Can A&M get Nussmeier off the spot? He is good in scramble situations, but I feel like once you get him moving where he can spray the ball, those chances go up, right? And he had a sensational fourth quarter against Ole Miss, and he was really efficient against Arkansas. But when you really break that down, he was struggling through the first three quarters against the Rebels. And then last week, his defense came up with 2 turnovers well inside the red zone to extend LSU's lead. That was a 16-10 game in the middle of the third quarter before Whit Weeks made a just silly play and got the Tigers in a first and goal situation. And that's where LSU built the lead. Now, that's a really good win on the road at Arkansas. Arkansas went in and thumped Mississippi State today. Look, A&M's going to have to play the level that they played against Missouri. Like, that has got to be it to give yourself a chance to win tonight. I think the Aggies have got to play their A game. If LSU is going to play their A game, I think the Aggies have to be up to the task. They can do it for sure. I believe they can. But take your eye off the ball. Watch what's going on in the trenches on both sides.
So, yes, for sure. And one of the matchups I'm so curious to watch is you've heard a lot about Whit Weeks. You've heard a lot about Le'Veon Moss. I'm curious to see how that defensive line for LSU and also the linebacker play, plugging those holes, are going to be able to slow down the Walker, Louisiana native, who I know wants to have a big, big night against a team that's from right in his backyard.
Yeah, and for A&M defensively, it's super interesting. Caden Durham listed as probable, the freshman from Duncanville, running back for LSU. He's going to be the fastest man on the field tonight every time he's out there. How do the A&M linebackers pursue him? How do they tackle in space? You can't look at Caden Durham's overall numbers and think that's what he is. He's getting better week after week. He's becoming a much more viable piece of their offense. And as I said, if you don't tackle, if you don't get him to the ground, it is going to be big chunk plays. That's something that I don't think I've heard a lot of people talk about this week, is A&M's ability to get Caden Durham, not just Caden Durham, but the elite LSU skill talent on the ground. They're going to get their catches. Kyron Lacey's going to get his first down catches. That's going to be fine. You got to tackle. Mason Taylor, he's going to get his catches. You got to tackle. Just if you can make them nickel and dime themselves way down the field, be good in the red zone, force some field goals, that could be the difference in the game.
So important to note that Caden Durham is not even listed on their final availability report. Yeah. So he is going to play. The only name on any of those availability reports that was game time or anything is CJ Daniels, the LSU wide receiver. So no surprises there. We haven't seen him out there. At least Nuno said he hadn't seen him out there. We've got about 6.5 minutes before we wrap this thing up. The first ever TexAgs Tailgate. Ronnie, games around the country. Which games have you been keeping an eye on? I gave Nick 6 to make a graphic for games that I thought impacted the A&M college football playoff chances, stuff like that. You know, their inside track or not into Atlanta, stuff like that. Things that I'm watching from an A&M perspective. But you can take it anywhere. Which games have you been watching all day leading up to this?
I watched the entire 11 o'clock block. I did not dive into a lot of the 2:30 games. I was mingling around the office, stuff like that.
Talk about that 11 o'clock block. I think the most disappointing one was how poorly Navy protected.
Yeah, but that would have been the easiest. If we could sports bet in this state, I would have put a good wager on Notre Dame. Navy was getting way too many national. It was too on the radar for everybody.
I would have predicted Notre Dame to win the game too, but I wouldn't have predicted 51-14. They had 6 turnovers in
the most surprising thing, I think, in that first block was Ole Miss trailing Oklahoma at half.
Yeah.
Oklahoma actually looked like they had some semblance of offense in the first half in Oxford. Lane Kiffin goes in at half. They get it fixed up and adjusted. But look, that's an Ole Miss team and an Ole Miss offense that gets a lot of hype about how high-flying they are and how many points they score. Much like Tennessee, a lot of their point totals have been in the mid-20s this year. Does that scale up on the back half of their schedule? We'll see. I think it's going to need to for them to stay in the hunt. And then, once Missouri, Brady Cook played, he was not healthy. The starting running back was out.
27-0 Alabama.
That would have been another easy.
That'd have been it makes your marquee win look a little bit worse, but your one loss looks way better with Notre Dame blowing out a ranked opponent. Yeah.
You can't play transitive property in college football this year. Like this year more so than any other.
But it helps for resumes. If you're sitting there at 10-2 at the end of the year, you're starting to compare resumes.
Well, here's why I look at A&M's schedule the rest of the way. Like, obviously, a win tonight would be massive with the national spotlight, the amount of recruits that you have on campus, but you need to split these next two.
Yeah.
1-1 against South Carolina and LSU. You should handle business against New Mexico State and Auburn after the bye week.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would set up a date with Texas where you're playing to probably go to Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some scenarios where it couldn't go your way and you could be out of it, but you'd be playing for maybe an at-large spot in the playoff or a trip to Atlanta with the Horns coming to town. I mean, how much more could you ask?
So we've got 5 minutes left on the first ever edition of the TexAgs Tailgate, and I want to end it with this segment. It's going to be Zane's 5 predictions.
Ooh.
Now, keep in mind that I don't know anything about football. So you're here. You are allowed to publicly shame me for any of the picks I
I'm a
make.
baseball analyst.
I know you are.
And you want to spend 5 minutes talking about Early and the boys last night?
Then they look damn impressive.
They look
13-1, only give up 1 hit, walk 3 guys. That was
struck out 15.
It was pretty impressive. Perfect segue because I'm cheating on one of my 5 predictions. And if game day can do it, then so can I. I'll pick game 2 of the World Series tonight. That's a homer pick. I'll take the Dodgers to win, go up 2-0, going to the Bronx. And then I'll take Shohei Ohtani to hit a home run. He came about 2 feet shy last night.
Yeah, I'll go Yamamoto gives them 5 1/3.
That would be a dream. That'd be a dream. I'll take it. You're done. That's it. No more speaking.
Okay.
Prediction number 2. Back to the football. I think LSU gives up a sack tonight. And I know that's going out on a limb, right? That's tough. But they've only given up 2 all year. So I think the Aggies drop Nussmeier more than once.
With the amount of talent and quality that A&M has on their defensive line, and as well as Jay Bateman and Mike Elko kind of scheme it up,
sure,
the odds greatly favor that the Aggies are going to get to them at least once tonight. Like that is not a stat that you keep.
That's such an outlier. Like it's so amazing that they've been able to do that for so long.
But to tie it back to Aggie baseball, it was like when Braden Montgomery was on that incredible heater throughout March and April. You're like, at some point he's going to dip. And he didn't dip until May.
Sure.
So I mean, there's a chance that LSU, they're playing really well, and they've got a lot of NFL guys on that offensive line.
So prediction number 3. Walker, Louisiana is about 25 miles away from Death Valley. I'll take the Walker native. Texas A&M running back Le'Veon Moss gives you more than 115 yards and a score tonight.
That would be one of the key ingredients to a successful recipe, I believe, for Mike Elko and company. And again, what rush offense has LSU played that's as efficient and as talented as A&M's? I don't know that there is one. Remember when they got Arkansas, that was with a really gimpy Taylon Green, and Jaquindon Jackson played maybe a drive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that the LSU front 7, again, it's what I said, it's a take your eye off the ball kind of game for me. Can the Aggies, as good and as efficient as they've been moving people in the run game, can they have a Mizzou-esque day tonight?
Pick 4, because I think that, in a game that's so fine like this, right, the margin, the line right now is 1 point in A&M's favor. Turnovers, line of scrimmage, everything of that sort, right? The old cliches, they're so important. I think it's crucial to win the turnover battle, and I think A&M wins it because Will Lee comes up with an interception in this ball.
There's another kind of a piece to this game that could be a differentiator when it terms of the outcome, and nobody wants to talk about it, is how is it officiated?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting ready to blame officiating on anything. It has just been,
especially in this league, in this month, it's been very questionable across the conference.
I was going to say spotty.
Shoddy.
Whatever. It's all those adjectives are true, and you really, really hope that a game that is potentially is, we know that these teams are fairly evenly matched because that's what Vegas, that's what the line says, what the sharps tell us, is that this is a really evenly matched game. You hope that the guys in stripes don't have an influence on it.
Yeah, and then my final prediction, and I began my predictions with the homer pick. I'll end it with the homer pick. The Ags win this one. Nuno guessed 31-27. He kind of stole my thunder. That's the same score prediction that I sent to Nick. I think that with the 12th man blacked out at Kyle Field at night, I think that's enough to help the Aggies move to 5-0 in SEC play for their first time since joining the league.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd predict A&M to win. If you go back and you look, since Notre Dame, when Connor Wigman has started games, you know what the A&M's point totals are? 52, 41, and 34. Now, which one of those teams that he played against has got a defense as good as LSU or as talented as LSU?
We gave a lot of credit to Notre Dame's, right?
Right. But that was the outlier. A&M
That's
scored
the
13,
outlier.
right? So it'll be interesting. Again, Whit Weeks is playing out of his mind, but I do think there's plays to be made against the back seven of the LSU defense. Like they're good players. Major Burns has been in college for a long time, very seasoned veteran. There are good players out there, or they're elite talent out there. That's why, if you're asking me for an X factor, one of these two, Jabri Barber or Terry Bussey. I think when A&M's offense is on the field, much like Caden Durham and Kyron Lacey will be the best athletes when LSU has the ball, I think when A&M is on the field, the best two athletes on the field will be Jabri Barber and Terry Bussey.
We'll see how it shakes out. Kickoff is at 6:44 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be on ABC. Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, and the crew on the call. Our thanks to Nick Savage, David Nuno for joining us from Kyle Field. That means Kay Nagley and Jamie Murray for helping out from behind the scenes. Stuart Waite doing a big-time job in crunch time and clutch time.
We didn't fire him?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
He helped us put together the graphics package and everything for this. So our thanks to everybody out there tuning in. Get to Kyle Field, be loud, wear black, and beat the hell out of LSU. We'll see you next time on the TexAgs Tailgate.